as to children being introduced to this type of sexuality so young. I don't think that that's necessary at all. I don't think it's an impingement on free speech at all. And not only that, there's going to necessarily be limits on every single freedom that we have.
The same people who told you that removing explicit material from a children's library is literally fascism are the exact same people who want the government to control everything you say and see online. Let that sink in for a second. They will march in the streets for the freedom to expose your 7-year-old to deeply inappropriate content at school, and in the same breath cheer on big government deciding what you're allowed to watch online. That contradiction just got exposed live on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and the guy who did it didn't even break a sweat. Andrew Wilson walked into that studio, sat down next to an entire panel pushing that exact agenda, and one by one dismantled every argument they had with nothing but logic and a complete refusal to pretend their position makes any sense. What you're about to hear is bigger than one debate. This is the hypocrisy of the modern left laid completely bare, in real time. I'm Oliver. Let's get into it.
Of what he puts in his mind, and social media for the things that we are doing as adults, yeah, it's pouring into our household and we're doing well with it. But for an adolescent, like these young kids, I'm seeing kids at dinners when we're at restaurant surfing TikTok while their parents are not even paying attention to what they're doing. Like that right there is a massive problem. And if we don't, as a society, get a hold of that, then this will never end. There will be more series like Adolescence that hit even harder because we're witnessing it in our own lives.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, you seem to be in agreement with some of that.
Yeah, it's poison. There's no doubt. It re-scrambles children's brains. And it's very difficult to monitor. Even if you have parental controls, they can find ways around it. At school, they have peers who will assist them in getting around it. You have to monitor it really well. Smartphone technology for my own kids, it was kind of new. I wish that I, in retrospect, had done more guarding against that myself. You don't know the dangers of that technology until children get a hold of it, and then you're left scrambling going, oh man, I wish I had known that this was going on or that was going on, but you have no idea. Now, though, we have a little bit of retrospect, and we know that it's an appropriate thing to do to guide against this type of technology because, yeah, he's absolutely right. It does create all sorts of problems for kids. I'm not sure that gets to the heart of the masculinity and feminine issue, but I totally agree with him that we should be safeguarding our children against this technology. It does seem to be very bad for them.
And James, there is pretty well unfettered pornography on the internet available to young men and women, obviously, but men are watching a lot of often quite violent, degrading sexual scenes in these porn clips they're seeing online. None of that can help in the way an impressionable young male mind goes about trying to forge a real relationship with an actual woman.
Well, I think it's important not to say young male mind, it's any person's mind, right? Like, I don't think we should victimize men. I can't believe Andrew's agreeing with me. But yeah, it's awful. I mean, I genuinely don't think people should have phones until they're 16. They certainly shouldn't have social
Well, Australia's done that, and I'm not against it. The smartphone ban till 16.
I mean, it's terrifying.
Why not?
You can't go on air, on TV, and say whatever you want. Like, I know you're pretending that you're uncensored, but you couldn't sit here and say literally whatever you want. Well, not really, Piers, because if you said something that incited hatred or racism or a terror attack,
I wouldn't want to say
be arrested.
I wouldn't
but online,
why would I want to incite a terror attack?
I'm not saying that you want to. I'm just trying to make a point. Online,
you're saying I can't say what I want.
Online,
I do not want to incite a terror attack.
No, but if you did,
I'm allowed. Just you're raising an interesting point about censorship.
Yeah,
we're uncensored because I don't say anything I don't want to say.
Right.
So when you say I'm censoring, I'm actually self-censoring. I'm not. I'm not going to call for a terror attack.
I'm not saying that you would ever do that, of course, but I'm saying that if you did, there would be accountability for that because you are broadcasting to a lot of people.
Right.
But a lot of people online do not have that gate stopping them from saying horrendous things, and so therefore it can blow up online, excuse the horrible pun, and that shouldn't be allowed. There should be a system in place that stops people broadcasting things that aren't meant to be broadcast to millions of people.
One of the problems, Tommy, Toby Young, who's a British journalist, director of Free Speech Union, very, very big in promoting and defending free speech, says Adolescence, the new teen drama, is pro-censorship propaganda, partly paid for by the state. It is now being seized upon by Labour left-wing MPs as evidence we need more online censorship. And that is, of course, you talk about a swinging pendulum. What you don't want to come out of all this is an overreaction and an over-censorship, because that in itself becomes a problem.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with Sean on this point, too. I think parenting has more to do with this than any of us really, can even understand. I mean, many, I'm sure, in this panel can. But parenting is, to me, the end-all be-all of all of this. I mean, you can watch horrible things online. You can listen to people say horrible things, but if you've got a good foundation with good parents at home, hopefully two, that provides you with a lot of guidance and support to navigate these things. And it doesn't really, scramble your mind in the way that those that are not blessed with a two-parent household may be impacted by it. I don't believe that censorship is ever the answer. I believe that more speech is the answer to speech that you don't like. And as much as I don't like certain people online and what they say, whether they're the Tate brothers or whoever else, I believe that they should have the right and the ability to say it. And then people like us should have the right and ability to respond to it. I think that's the healthiest way to come to a great consensus, or at least a public square where we can all debate ideas with dialogue and conversation. But I don't think that censorship is ever the answer. And I think that, our leaders in America have done a great job of emphasizing that, especially to the European countries who believe censorship is the way to cleanse or the way to legislate morality. I just don't think that's the way to do it.
Well, the instinctive reaction, certainly in the UK, for a long time now, many years, has been to censor and to ban and prohibit and so on. And I think people are beginning to wake up to the downside of that, is that once you chip away at things like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, you're heading down a pretty slippery road, which can be dictated by your government, and then that's not a place.
It's interesting though, isn't it? I mean, I just want to make a side point, and I don't need to get into it, but like, your government are banning books, so they are literally talking about free speech whilst also banning free speech in it that they don't agree with. So what you're saying is nice, and I agree with you in principle, but that's not literally what is happening. It's not the same
as banning books.
You talked about freedom of speech, right? And everyone coming together and having a discussion about it, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah, but
putting
we're talking
graphic
about in the
gay
home,
porn into
school.
Children's libraries is a little different.
I mean, no one should be putting porn into a children's library. I think we all agree on that.
Then why are you complaining that that's being
Because that's
banned?
not what I'm discussing. I'm discussing books that talk about diversity, equality, that talk about Black Lives Matter, that talk about gay pride. Like, this is
so I don't have the same take as the rest of the panel when it comes to the idea of legislating morality. I think that there are ideas which are subversive and that we can get rid of, and that's absolutely fine to do. I don't think that we need to have unfettered access to pornography. I don't think that we need to have unfettered access to children being introduced to this type of sexuality so young. I don't think that that's necessary at all. I don't think it's an impingement on free speech at all. And not only that, there's going to necessarily be limits on every single freedom that we have. By necessity, that's the way it has to be, unfortunately. And the reason it has to be that way is because otherwise you're going to have nothing but subversives who go in and subvert your entire culture, which is exactly what happened in the UK, and it's exactly what's been happening in the United States. So we have to have some way to fight back against that.
All right, Sean, final word to you.
Let's talk about what actually went down in that clip. Because on the surface, it looks like a debate about children, technology, and free speech. And it is. But underneath that, there's a much bigger ideological battle playing out, and Andrew Wilson exposed it without even flinching. The panel started in reasonable territory. Smartphones are dangerous for kids. Inappropriate content is damaging young minds. Social media is rewiring adolescent brains. Everybody more or less agreed. Even the more liberal voices on that panel couldn't argue against the data. Australia banned smartphones for under 16s. The Netflix series Adolescence is showing us in real time what this content is doing to an entire generation. Nobody in that room was defending TikTok addiction or deeply disturbing material reaching 12-year-olds. That part was settled. Then came the pivot, and this is where it got revealing. The moment someone on that panel tried to connect online censorship to what's happening in American schools, the conversation shifted from honest debate into pure narrative warfare. Suddenly we're hearing about banned books. Suddenly removing age-inappropriate material from a children's library becomes the moral equivalent of authoritarianism. And that framing, that deliberate, cynical conflation, is exactly the playbook the left runs every single time they get cornered. Here's the reality: nobody is banning books. What is happening is that parents, school boards, and elected officials are saying that explicitly inappropriate material does not belong in elementary school libraries. That is not censorship, that is curation. Every library in the world curates its collection. The question is simply, who gets to decide what's appropriate for children? Parents and communities, or ideological activists who've embedded themselves into educational institutions and are pushing their own agenda? Andrew Wilson answered that cleanly. Some ideas are subversive. Some content causes real harm to developing minds. Acknowledging that is not a threat to free speech. It is the responsible exercise of the cultural standards that hold a society together. And when the other panelist tried to fold political activism literature into the same conversation as inappropriate material being removed from schools, Wilson didn't take the bait. He stayed precise. He stayed on point, because he understood that the bait and switch only works if you let it. The free speech argument the left deploys here is also worth pulling apart. They will invoke free speech to defend deeply inappropriate content reaching children, then turn around and support government-led internet censorship, deplatforming of conservative voices, and the systematic removal of ideas they disagree with from public discourse. That is not a principled free speech position. That is free speech as a weapon, used selectively, pointed only in one direction, and put down the moment it stops serving the agenda. What this clip ultimately shows us is something conservatives have understood for a long time. The culture war is not being fought in Congress. It's being fought in classrooms, in libraries, on smartphones, on streaming platforms, and in the framing of debates exactly like this one. And the only way to win it is to do what Andrew Wilson did. Show up. Stay grounded in logic, name what's actually happening, and refuse to be moved by bad faith arguments dressed up as principle. The hypocrisy isn't accidental, it's the strategy. And now you've seen it exposed. Stay sharp, stay informed. This is Oliver Reacts.